Hi, I'm Shannon Brescher Shea. I gave the Earth Day sermon for a church in Bethesda, and I'm repeating it today for those of you who weren't able to make the service. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. This is from Ecclesiastes 3:2. You've probably heard this refrain either from the Bible or the famous song from the 1960s. In fact, it's a very old idea that's shared across many cultures. The idea that you do certain rituals and actions during different seasons is why times like Lent and Advent are special on the Christian calendar. They're set aside for certain behaviors. It just wouldn't be the same if we did them year-round. Other religions and cultures throughout the world have similar rhythms to their holidays, like spring to celebrate starting over or fall as a time for harvest. In fact, the turning of the seasons and the changing of the nature offers us a pattern to follow. New life, growth, harvest, and rest. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. Each season offers us a new way to see and experience God and creation. Right now, we're seeing the cycle start all over again as the flowers bloom and the trees bud. With reminders all around us, it seems like it should be easy to do. But our Western society rejects and discourages this rhythm. It demands constant production and consumption to feed our economy, and even for survival. Our culture discourages rest, whether through encouraging hustle or by denying many people paid sick leave. There's a drumbeat of constant progress forward, no matter what. There's no space for rest or forbid backward movement. There are no cycles coming back around. There's no space to breathe, to consider, to think, to be. But it's hugely unsustainable to keep working without rest like our society encourages. The hyper-production and consumption results in piles of garbage, from fast fashion to endless broken electronics. Our focus on work and a narrow definition of efficiency means that we produce energy at any cost. Coal and natural gas plants pump out greenhouse gases that choke the air of our most vulnerable communities and accelerate climate change. The willingness and in some cases need to put up with incredibly long commutes for the sake of work results in cars piled up in traffic, speeding on to the next destination, clogging up our neighborhoods and atmosphere. The grind leads to people running themselves so ragged just to survive that they can't stop and take the time to connect with their neighbors. It burns us and our planet out. Perhaps not surprisingly, God calls us to reject this mindset. God himself modeled rest in the very act of creation. Genesis 2 begins, "By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." Jesus escapes from the crowds and is preaching, not only to pray and meditate, which he certainly does, but just to chill. In fact, when the storm came over the lake in the famous story of Jesus calming the storm, it was interrupting his nap. Like all of nature, and as we see God and Jesus, humans need rest. There is joy and beauty in it. In addition, rest enables us to grow. Growth isn't possible without times of pause and recovery. As my activist friend Asia Ray describes, resting in the winter is like composting. When the compost freezes over, it pauses its process of breaking down organic matter. But when it heats up again, it starts breaking down faster than ever. We need rest for ourselves, our communities, and our world. The flip side of this constant grind is hyper-independence. Society tells us we shouldn't rely on others. In fact, that we can't rely on others. That we should and must go it alone. Think of the lone cowboy, of the people who say they have no obligation to others. The ads that say you personally need this thing now, rather than sharing it. But again, this hyper-independence is environmentally and socially unsustainable. We accumulate so much stuff that we need storage spaces to hold it. We underpay the people who make, sort, and deliver all of this stuff so we can get anything we want with overnight delivery. We live psychologically and physically separated from people. That makes it hard to make roads that are safe to pedestrians or to run viable public transit in many parts of the country. We hoard wealth when so many people have so little. We think only of human welfare, and often of only the richest humans, when we share our planet with so many different species. Even those of us who are constantly giving to others can fall into this hyper-independent attitude. It leads us to think we have to do it on our own, and then we fall into dangerous saviorism. We think we're the only ones who can save the world, and so get so stuck in our own perspective that we fail it instead. Again, God and creation teaches us another way. No one organism stands on its own. No one member of the church stands on their own. As it says in 1 Corinthians, if the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. What we need, what we long for, is interdependence. We all live in interdependent networks of life, for our families, to our church community, to our neighbors who pay taxes to provide community services. We live in ecologically interdependent networks that provide us with water and air, as well as the global ecosystem that ties everything on Earth together. Interdependence allows us to take rest. It allows us to take turns doing the work. Just like in a chorus, when one person takes a breath, others can step in to sing. Allowing others to take the burden for a little while allows us to come back to the work well rested and able to take it on again. Similarly, we can lay our burdens down and allow others to help us carry them. In fact, that's just what we at Church of Bethesda do with our emotional and spiritual struggles during our Prayers of the People time. To sum up, American culture values constant work and hyper-independence. But true sustainability lies in cycles of rest and work, as well as interdependence. I've certainly felt the power and the danger of that constant grind and that hyper-independence. I've also seen the healing power of rest and interdependence. As many of you heard me discuss in the Prayers of the People time, I had burnout in the summer and fall of 2022. The worst of COVID-19 had passed, the kids were back in school, everything seemed okay. And yet, I clearly wasn't. I was absolutely emotionally and physically exhausted all the time. My joints hurt way more than they should at my age, and I had near constant stress headaches. Worst of all, I went through periods of what I called the fog. In these periods, everything, good and bad, was obscured. I just didn't care about things. I wanted to, but I just couldn't. For those of you who know me well, the idea of not caring about things is terrifying. Apathy is the direct opposite of my natural personality. As I looked into it, I realized I was going through autistic burnout that had turned into depression. My lifelong tendency to do all the things without resting and not relying on others was stressful enough. COVID made it exponentially worse. My dedication to being with my kids and giving them my full attention when I wasn't at work had drained my energy past empty so many times over that I had lost count. The inability to plan anything throughout all my coping mechanisms, way out of whack. By that point, even though the stress of the crisis had mostly passed, its effects on me hadn't. I know many of us have gone through a similar process. When I mentioned to Michelle a couple of weeks ago, who works our projection system, that I was speaking about rest, she jokingly asked me, "Rest? What's that?" But I found solace and ultimately healing in respecting my limits as well as my need for rest and interdependence. I've built set break times into my day with walks in the morning and lunch. Quieting my mind to be a good listener takes a lot of energy. So when I'm listening to the kids a lot, I find just time to read or just be in my own head. On the days when I'm falling down tired after the kids' bedtime, Chris takes over washing the dishes. I've learned to let go of feeling guilty for not contributing to every school event. I can feel confident in not bringing flowers in for the teacher because I know that other parents will do so. At the same time, I choose to organize Bike to School Day because I know that fits my unique skills and interests, and other people won't do it. Leaning into these cycles and relying on others has made me a better mom, wife, friend, and community member. But not draining myself dry every chance I get, I have reserves of energy left for unexpected projects or managing emotionally intense situations, including in our family. Now, I'm exploring how to find the in-between, the coming and going between rest and work. I'm modeling environmental and personal sustainability for my kids as best I can. It's giving me the emotional energy to change the oppressive systems around me and push for climate justice in an authentic, not forced way. So what does true sustainability, environmental, social, and personal, look like for you and for us as a community? How can you embrace cycles of work and rest so that you contribute where you are most needed? How can we as a community build interdependence so we can support each other? Answering these questions in a thoughtful, loving way can help us build a better world for everyone. Happy belated Earth Day. Thank you for listening.